My name is Myriane Ouellette, or Min. Min is good as well. If you can't say my name, that's great. I'm founder and CEO of a company called O Strategies. We work at the intersection of communities and organizations. So through more than 15 years of consulting, and before that, multiple jobs where I didn't feel like I fit in, I've understood that ultimately, organizations are systems that are made out of people. And in order to drive growth, whether it means profit or whether that means social impact, it means that organizations need to start thinking about building resilient teams. So focusing on building leadership skills that can tackle complex human behaviors. Real transformation happens when we make space for that human side of change. So how do we do that? Well, it's by bringing people back to the center. We help organizations remember that processes are made for people. They're made by and for people. And that's what this session is about. So it's about leading or seeing leadership as stewardship. Because most successful organizations will learn that stewards build resilient teams through change. But before we get into the stories, I'd like to get you to engage a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit more of an engaging sessions than most that you've seen. So first, I want you to take a minute and think of a time where you have had to go through some change. You know, that could be small, it could be big, it could be personal, it could be for your business, anything, right? A move, it could be a new business idea, a new relationship, anything. So take a minute to think about that and write a few notes down if you want. In a second, I'm going to get you to pair up. I thought there were going to be more people, so we're going to, play with the cards that were dealt. So if you want to step out of your comfort zone and meet somebody new, move around the room and find somebody. And then I'll get you to just share your story. You don't have to go in detail. You can be very high level. I don't mean to traumatize anybody or put anybody in a situation where you're uncomfortable. So just find a partner and then talk for about 3 minutes each. Share your stories. Okay, go ahead. All right, folks. I hope you had time to share your stories. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to pair up. So your team is going to pair up with another team, okay? And then you're going to talk about what themes emerged. So if maybe there's a team that can go out back and then two other teams can connect, but what themes emerged? What did you notice? So join another pair. All right, what themes emerged? You can join another team. Yeah, just jump in. I'm going to need a mic to go around in a minute, too, after a while. I don't know if there's another mic that we can use. Yeah, thank you. All right, folks. So would someone like to share from each group and maybe just kind of share what did emerge? What feelings emerged through change? What were the commonalities between your stories? So we have a mic that's going through here. And so what themes emerged in your group? Oh, thank you. I know it's tough to speak in front of a crowd, but at least we're a small crowd, so it's not so bad.
Hi. Oh God. Okay. Hi. We went in like a really cool way and talking about like what were our initial things to change, and then a question like I asked us is like, does the change feel different when it's like your choice of change or when you are forced to change, and does your body immediately resist it with hell to the fuck no? Which seems to be a general no. Like it's different when you're in control of how you change and the speed in which it happens versus when things tell you it's over, it's time, GTFO, kind of thing.
Right. So how about this group? What themes emerged when you talked about change and what feelings came up and everything? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I was surprised to see how many people, the example of change they brought was almost like a reorientation of their career or a change of career. Many of us have brought the same thing. Yeah. One thing people agreed is that change can be scary. In other situations, I would say it's even painful, but it's a powerful motor of growth, I think. And change is what enables you to move forward, because if you don't change, you stay in the same spot. I heard people talk about what about when we decide to change versus when the change is kind of imposed on you. I can see that, but at the same time, I've got a lot of blind spots. So I think that when other people are proposing the change, that means I need to really take a good look, because maybe they're seeing things that I'm not seeing. And maybe it's just going to be as rewarding to change what I'm doing based on what other people are telling me, or how they're seeing it. So I think it's really good to keep the other people's opinion into consideration.
Yeah, and whether it's a good change or a bad change, you go through a series of emotions, right? And oftentimes you'll go through a denial phase, and especially if you're being imposed that change, right? So I call that the hidden half of change, right? So the emotional landscape that most workplaces will never acknowledge, and we'll go in that a little bit deeper. You can go take your seats if you'd like, or you can stay there if you want to. All right, thanks for participating. That's really helpful when people do. So I'm going to share a story of my personal change. So my personal story around change. So when I was just 7 years old, I'm originally from Winnipeg. I live in New Brunswick now. But when we lived in Winnipeg with my family, my brother and I and my two parents, we traveled to Ottawa to visit my grandparents. We stopped overnight, so we were driving, in one of those crappy motel rooms, you know, the type, you know, with the shady lighting, with the not lit parking lot, and those doors to the motel rooms that almost feel like cardboard, right? So at about 3:30 a.m., I woke up to find a shadow passing through in front of the window of our motel room. I was sleeping closest to the window with my brother, and my parents were on the other bed, the other twin bed. All of a sudden, the doorknob started to rattle, and a man walked in, carrying an axe and a gun, and a mask. He tied up my dad and knocked out my mom, and then my visceral reaction at 7 years old was to scream. I could not control what was coming out of my body. You know that type of paralyzing fear where you have no more control of your senses? That's exactly what I was living through. So needless to say, I was the one who got the most of it until a neighbor started making a lot of noise outside because she was getting ready to leave for the day. The man heard the noise and rushed outside and ran away. He got locked up for 7 years in prison. By the way, he was caught. And, you know, 20 years later, so I was 27 at that time, my husband and I lost a baby through our pregnancy, late in our pregnancy. So I'm not telling you these stories to traumatize you, but what I'm trying to say is that when I was 7 years old, and only at 7 years old, my whole perspective and worldview changed completely. So all of a sudden, I understood that bad people really did exist, right? Because a 7-year-old kid, if they're in the right environment, usually wouldn't understand that until they see something, right? When we lost our baby, Gabrielle, who we named Gabrielle, she's our little angel baby, the same thing happened to me. My whole worldview shifted. I always thought that I would fall pregnant and I would have kids and it would be easy. But all of a sudden, jealousy, grief, anger all popped up. Some moments of calm, but then back again into the grief. But we didn't hide from it. We let it exist. And so did my parents. After that moment in the hotel room, when we got broken into, we came home and we were supported. The environment that my parents created for me, and we were lucky because my mom opened a women's shelter in Manitoba and had a lot of counseling experience, and my dad always worked as a youth care worker. So we were supported by parents who could create the right environment for us to heal. We were encouraged to talk about it. We were encouraged to cry, to be mad. I remember hitting into a pillow so hard, just pretending that it was that man, right? So those moments, those shaped who I am today. What I learned is that change isn't situational, it's emotional, right? And it's identity work. Change actually shapes who you are as a person. Whether it's good change or bad change, it doesn't matter. And it's what the environment gives you, it's the environment around you that allows you to create resilience for change. So it's about letting go of old stories and reshaping new ones. And I've carried that lesson through my career. It's really shaped what I do today and why I do what I do. I've worked everywhere, from shoe stores. I worked at Naturalizer. I don't know if anybody knows that one. Yeah, so old ladies or older ladies coming to get their shoes. Yeah, my gosh. I worked at a call center, at Investor Group, and then I worked at Canadian Heritage at the government for a few years. So I have a wide range of experiences. I think I counted once that I had 27 jobs in my life. That's a lot, right? It's a lot. Yeah, it's too much, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But okay, so I'm francophone, je suis francophone, je viens de Manitoba, so I'm a minority francophone from Manitoba, and I've moved to New Brunswick for about 18 years from now, right? I'm also bisexual in a heteronormative couple, which puts me on the outside of the queer community often. Thank you. I'm also an undocumented Métis, and I say that because my Métis blood comes from the woman's side of our line and is undocumented, so we're not able to get our Métis proof. But I still celebrate Métis culture, and it's dear and near to my heart. And I'm also neurodivergent, like probably most of you here. And for years, I really thought something was wrong with me. Changing jobs that often, not being able to hold down a job. I didn't get fired, though. I left. It was a choice. I often just left and switched jobs because I was bored, or, I saw that the systems were all designed for the same people, right? They were designed for people that processed information the same way. So what I realized is that create cracks within organizations. Right? And when the pandemic hit, those cracks started getting wider, right? And hybrid work or online work also created safer environments for some of us that needed that space, but created a divide and a crack in how we're going to manage humanity in our workplaces, right? How we're going to create those human connections. So all of a sudden, that was gone, and people didn't know how to work around it, and they still don't know, okay? And now with AI transforming how we work, those human gaps are going to become even more visible. So the question becomes, how do we lead in a world where humans feel more isolated, more anxious, and are more complex than ever before? I'll share a little bit about the facts. What does the research say? But I'm going to start with this maybe familiar chart that you might know. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Who knows this tool, this chart? Yeah, so if you've gone to business school or if you've done any marketing, you've seen this, or in anything psychology related. So Abraham Maslow developed this theory in 1940s, and hey, it's still relevant, folks. Isn't that cool? Yeah. It says that it's proposing that human behavior is motivated by a hierarchy of 5 basic needs. So going from physiological needs, which is the basic needs, to self-actualization, which is fulfillment. Now, let's compare this with generations, shall we? All right, so if you look at the silent generation and the greatest generation, so anybody born between 1901 and 1945, they were mostly preoccupied to fulfill those first 2 tiers, right, of the needs. So food, water, safety, those were their biggest priorities. So if I think about my grandparents, who lived in the south end of Manitoba, in a little village called St. Pierre-Jolie. So you come from Winnipeg, I'm guessing. She's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So they had a farm, right? They had 7 children, and the goal was to, procreate. Let's get more kids, because the kids become farmhands, right? But they were happy enough in the sense that they had everything they needed, and that was good enough for them. Now, think about baby boomers in Generation X, which they tend to have a world view of, I'm going to get a job. I mean, and I'm generalizing here, folks, okay? Okay, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to work up the ladder so that I can get a better job as I go. They are motivated by intimate relationships, friends, prestige, feeling of accomplishment, right? So I'm going to go to university, I'm going to get that degree, and I'm going to get a job, okay? Let's go to millennials. So I'm between millennials and Gen X's. I'm an old millennial, a young Gen X, I guess, is what you would put me in. So I'm born in 1983, so that's why I say that. So born 1981 to 2010. So these are the young people of the workforce. We're not that young anymore, millennials, but that's what it is. We were basically surrounded by saying, you can do whatever you want to do. Right? Whatever you put your mind to, you can have it. So we are motivated mostly by self-actualization, which means that I need my purpose, my own personal purpose, to match my organization's purpose. And if I don't feel like, if I'm in a job and if I'm not contributing, and if I don't see the impact that I have, then guess what? I'm out of there. That's what I did. That's what I jumped from job to job to job to job, until I understood that my job, I was going to make it my own. I was going to make it up. I'm going to become an entrepreneur, right? That's my path. Okay, I got to find my notes. So you can't reach self-actualization unless you go through that middle tier, which is belonging. Okay, so that's the other one. The level Gen Z often lives in, self-actualization, is not attainable unless they reach that belonging. And belonging requires more than inclusive policies, right? It requires human connection. According to Mercer's 2023 Workforce Turnover Trends Report, voluntary turnover in the US costs businesses over $1 trillion a year. And turnover costs about 2 to 3 times your salary. And that goes up when you talk about high executive positions, right? So turnover is very, very expensive. Behind every resignation, there's a story. Right? Usually we're bored. Relationships with their direct superior is poor. Lack of belonging and misalignment. And when we look at who's in the workforce now, belonging matters even more. Did you know that 61% of immigrant or newcomers leave their jobs within 12 months of being there? Why? Lack of belonging. In Canada, reports by the Conference Board and Deloitte show that neurodivergent workers face much more lower employment rates than anybody else, right? And nearly half conceal their neurotype out of fear for being judged, for being blamed. Fear of stigma. 30 to 70% of those neurodivergent folk are part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, right? With a particularly strong link in the autistic community. Did you know that transgender and gender diverse individuals are 6 times more likely to be autistic than anybody else? You knew that? Isn't that wild? It is beautiful, but we don't know how to support them in the workplace. So, when we talk about resilience, we can't say that it's a trait, right? Because it's an environmental condition. People thrive, like my story when I was 7 years old, people thrive when systems are designed for humanity, right? And to understand what those environments look like, well, let's talk about power and influence. Because we often assume that everyone experiences change in the same way, right? But our capacity for change is always shaped by our power, and power is built by privilege. Think of the workforce today versus the 1980s. So back then, leaders were mostly men in suits, right? That stayed in roles for decades. Today, we're a mosaic. We're newcomers. Hey, we're women. Huh. Imagine that. Indigenous, queer folk, parents, neurodivergent thinkers, multilingual people, right? And we bring our full selves to work because we can't do otherwise. We're always bringing our full selves everywhere. We might be masking, but we're bringing our full selves. That means we're bringing our histories of being oppressed, of being excluded, silenced, or unseen, right? Many leaders have not built awareness of this, and it's not their fault, you know? But they're leading people with very different expectations of what safety means for them in the workplace. That's where the power wheel comes in. And I'm sure you've all seen this because you're all very, very smart people and you work a lot of DI work. So the power wheel, and if you haven't, that's fine, and this might bring you a new tool in your toolbox, right? So this tool maps where power sits. Gender, race, language, ability, you know, orientation, neurotype. Take a moment to look at that wheel. The closer you are to the center, the more privilege you have. When did you feel in? And when did you feel on the outs? When we usually debrief this tool, so I actually bring this tool when I'm talking to managers, when I'm talking to leaders within workplaces. What we usually hear is that people farther from the center carry multiple layers of change at once. I'm talking about changes, right? So historic trauma, new surroundings, family relationships, responsibilities, facing bias, grieving losses, and all those layers diminish their capacity for resilience. It's not about fragility. It's about bandwidth, because resilience is not an infinite resource. So when we design systems, we have to create awareness that not everybody changes at the same pace. Some people are carrying more than others, so it's our role to create conditions that honor where each person begins. Okay, so now that we see the landscape of power and emotion, let's look at how people actually, how to actually support people through change. Because I promised you tools, right? Okay. So every change, even the good kind, and we talked about this at our check-in question, right, comes with loss, right? We lose routines, You know, even if we're saying, oh, I'm gonna lose weight, that's a positive change. I'm gonna get healthier, it's a positive change. But we're kind of grieving, sitting on a couch eating a bag of Doritos, right? That was kind of nice. Yeah, so we're grieving that, okay? So we're losing routines, roles, identities, and certainty. That loss is what triggers the grief cycle. Denial, memories, acceptance, letting go, reframing, eventually. And it doesn't move in a straight line. It goes back and forth. It goes in loops, right? Have you ever thought you were over something, and then something triggers you, and you're right back again into denial? Yeah, that happens all the time. So, but a lot of change models out there, you know, when you talk about change management, who's heard about change management? Yeah, who here change management? Holy moly, geez, I have 10 minutes. Okay. You messed me up there, sorry. So a lot of change management out there tell us just to get through it, right? To communicate more, train more, to keep moving. But people aren't projects, and you can't schedule grief. I'm gonna go quickly through this because I want to get through some other things. So anger, you know, I have some quotes because it's great. These immigrants are all taking our jobs. Nostalgia, I miss when we could just hire the best person for a job without worrying about quotas. Bargaining, you know, I don't agree with everything, so they're coming around, right? But I can see why it's positive. And then reframing, well, maybe society isn't worse, maybe it's different, and hey, that might be okay, right? Evolving. Okay, so think about it this way. When there's construction on a street, safety laws require us building a pedestrian walkway for safety, right? So people don't get hit by cars, okay? In organizations, we rarely build those safety rails, right? Everyone just is expected to navigate their way through chaos. Just get there, just get over it. That's what it feels like when change is managed instead of stewarded. No, I'm gonna bring that word in, stewarding change. When people are told to just get on board, our job as people isn't to rush people through it. It's to design the pathways, like those pedestrian pathways, so that they can move through it safely. So think about DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are imposed in the workplace usually, right? It's usually check marks. Okay, we're done. We're done our job. But did that really change the behaviors within the organization to have policies? No. But it's not their fault because leaders aren't even equipped to know this. If you grow up in Alberta, in the rural areas of Alberta, and your whole narrative around you is white, and you don't understand other cultures because you've never been faced with other cultures, and you don't understand different languages because you don't see anything else. So my whole posture right now is we need to give these people grace because they've never been equipped to be able to understand and to go through the grieving process themselves of what their worldview is compared to what their worldview needs to be, right? So when organizations impose change, DEI is one thing, but there's lots of AI is going to disturb the workplaces. How are we accompanying our people through it? Okay, I'm going to tell you how. So one of the biggest tools is this one, psychological safety. So I'm going to make a difference here. Who here has heard of safe spaces? All right. I'm going to encourage you to stop using the words safe spaces. A safe space suggests that we have full protection, which rarely exists outside of a therapist's office, okay? And even then, with our therapists, we need to build trust to be able to open up completely, okay? Psychological safety, on the other hand, is the belief that you can speak up, that you can fail, or show who you are without fear or punishment of exclusion. So it's not about comfort, but it's about trust. So I like to use the word safer spaces as a definition instead of safe spaces, because we can never guarantee what the reaction of another person will be. Okay? Thank you. Yes, exactly, like harm reduction and safer sex, yeah. So, okay, so Psychological safety allows our nervous systems to recalibrate after disruptions, and that's done through dialogue. Okay, how do we get over things? We talk to a friend, right? We talk to our mom, if we're lucky to have a close relationship with her, right? We have conversations that allow us to work through the grief cycle. So the simplest way to do this is through meetings. We all have meetings, right? So these are actual meetings that I've facilitated. And can you see one trend in those meetings? What are we all doing? We're sitting in a circle. I do this with high executives. It's really fun at first. They all crack up and use the AA jokes at first, but at the end of the day, they all come to see me and they say, hey, Myriane, wow, we really got deep there, right? We were able to break down some barriers. Okay, so meetings reflect your culture in miniature. So if you have good meetings if you have good meetings where people are feeling like they can share, people are feeling like they can say, hey guys, I messed up, then your culture is probably pretty good. Okay, so I don't need my phone anymore, I'm good. Hold meetings in circle. So that means no head of the table, and shared responsibility. So what we do is we remove that hierarchical, I can't say that word, hiérarchique, I can say it in French, hierarchical barrier, okay, that we all feel when your boss is at the front of that conference room table and telling you what needs to be done for the week, right? So how can we co-create instead and invite people in? Okay, first it starts with creating dialogue agreements. And this could be done in a 1-hour session to say, hey guys, and gals, and thems, what do we want to believe in? What do we want to hold ourselves accountable to when we're having these conversations? And some of these conversations might be tough because, hey, we have a really tough or a different DEI policy coming in, and we need to change our behaviors to be able to fix that, which means that we need to have real conversations because, guys, I don't even know what trans means, you know, and that's a real thing, okay? So some of the dialogue principles that I'll share with you come from this book called The Fourfold Way, and if you're interested in this, I would definitely recommend by Angelise Arian. Show up or choose to be present, and choose to be present, right? So if you have a cell phone in your hand, that's fine, but if you need to take a call, by respect, you know, leave the room. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. That means that I speak with intention, not to let myself be heard, not because I like the sound of my own voice, and I listen with attention, right? Truly listening. I tell the truth about blame or judgment. I don't know what trans means. I feel like I don't really understand why immigration should happen, okay? Be open to the outcome, but not attached to the outcome, which is weird because we're all driven by results, right? Funding is all done by results. Oh, crap, man. So we need to be open to process, okay? Rotate leadership. Does it have to be you that's leading the meeting all the time, or can you help a staff get some facilitation experience? Start with check-ins to create presence like we did today, right? What emerged since last week? How are you coming into this week? If I have a staff that had moved, went through a big breakup, they're gonna maybe say that at the beginning, and I'm gonna understand a whole lot more why that people is a little spicy this week, right? What are your hopes and fears? I use that 80% of the time when I'm doing big meetings. And end with a checkout. Just ask, what have been your aha moments, your oh no moments, or your reflections? Okay, I'm finishing with this. High-performing teams share these leadership postures. Trust over control. So control breeds compliance. Trust builds ownership. I have a good friend, he always says, trust means following through. Whew. Transparency over secrecy. Clarity builds alignment. Be clear. Allow people to ask questions, why? Oh, vulnerability over perfection. I'm the boss and I mess up all the time. Say it, because when you say it, others will too. Okay? Well, co-creation over compliance. So people support what they help build. If you're part of the project, you're gonna own that shit. Excuse my language. You're gonna care about what that matters. So I'm gonna leave you on these notes. Start small, little changes for big impact, right? Little tweaks in what you're doing. Stay human and always design for learning. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Myriane.
My pleasure.
We have time for questions. What are your questions, folks? If you raise your hand, I'll bring the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Myriane. I really, really enjoyed that. And I think we do similar work. So that was exciting, and I'm learning from you. One thing that popped up for me as I was seeing your slide and hearing your comments about psychological safety, one of the reframes I've done of that in the last couple of years, it seems to be resonating for folks, is a shift from psychological safety to relational safety. And I wonder if that's come up as you've worked with folks on this kind of shift, and just generally what your impressions are of that. Thanks.
I see it's a word thing. I think it means similar things in the sense that we're creating safe or safer relationships, right? So it's all about creating the environment for people to feel like they're able to share. So for people are able to say that I failed, that I messed up. Do you have a different perspective? I'm curious.
No, thank you so much for that. I sometimes feel, especially because of how psych safety has been presented to folks, sometimes the reframe actually helps them to dig into the relational side. But even in the definition, I sometimes wonder if psychological safety is a bit, it's almost like there are implicit layers like belonging within psych safety, and the definition, the focus is so oriented towards, you know, that freedom to take interpersonal risks. Whereas relational safety, I sometimes find, refocuses our attention to actually building the relationships that will then empower that liberty to go out on a limb with your peers without that fear, but also be fostering the trust in some of the other dimensions. So perhaps it isn't really different. Perhaps it's only a different way of saying the same thing, but I have found it to be a more approachable concept for folks that gets more at the heart of what I think the underlying layers are. So I offer that, and I was curious on your experience with it.
Thank you so much. I guess when I hear you say that, I totally agree. I think that because I'm an academic, right? So my biggest challenge in being an academic, and I'm also writing a book, and that's going to come out probably in around April, March. My biggest challenge through that, though, was to be super relatable to people that don't have management backgrounds or have DEI backgrounds. Because what happens is that when we use complex language and we get hung up on the language we use, we lose people through it, right? So I guess I don't get hung up on the language so much anymore, and I try to bring in the tools to create the environment that we're looking for. Yeah. Because I think the how is often like, okay, psychological safety or relational safety, great. Totally, I believe that. But really, how do we do that? You know? Like, really.
Amazing, thank you. Other questions, folks?
What's your book about?
This. Exactly this. Yeah, building resilient teams through change. Yeah.
Couple more questions here.
My question is an aside. Or the question, so Calvin is more on point. I'm an aside.
Oh, you're an aside. Okay.
Calvin has a question.
Oh, okay. You were supporting.
No, I was going to say, how is your hair so nice?
I loved your presentation. I have a quick question. As someone who has a solo shop, I'm like a solo entrepreneur, and we talk about teams, where do you see sort of implementing some of these strategies in terms of not actually having a team per se, that like no employees or things like that, but how would you implement these sort of things in a solo sort of shop?
Gosh, with your clients. I mean, you have, it's all about human interaction, right? It really comes down to that. So I actually, when I meet clients for the first time, I build in psychological safety as I meet them, right? So right away, I try to establish those trust, that trust that creates better working relationships. But it's super intentional and it's designed. So in a shop where it's transactional, where you're meeting people, it's a little bit harder, but I think just connecting on things that aren't about what they're doing, right? Or connecting on what they're buying and the why behind it, because then it creates that emotional connection, right? For me, it means sitting and having a really good discovery process and starting with, hey, what are your hopes and fears around this project? They're like, nobody's ever asked me that question before. And I'm like, yeah, because by me understanding your hopes and fears, I can better design a methodology that's gonna make things happen for you, right? Yes.
I'm wondering how to frame it. I'm really intrigued. This is the second presentation I've seen today that focuses on staying human. And I remember when staying human, being real, which is a great message, but I would say 20, 30 years ago, we were meant to not be human, not be real. And do you see this as a real trend in business, that people are becoming more human and less robotic, maybe?
No, you're totally right. So back in the 1930s, Henry Ford introduced the line of, the production line, right? So we started working with automation. Everything became about automation. Everything in the workplace. Productivity, automation, up to today, right? We're still in that. Most organizations are still about productivity, SOPs. How much work? I mean, I've heard like Dan Martell and everything, like they're all talking about SOPs. Okay, great, Dan. But what about humans in that? What about how they're supporting change? Because that's the gap. So because our environments are getting so complex today, and complexity is a real thing, right? So we have diverse people, different people from different backgrounds that in Canada anyways, we haven't seen before. Other, with Indigenous folk, which they've been forced to see it, and they've been, we know the story behind that. But the complexities are so tough to handle today, and everything going on, and all the emotional and mental load that we have to deal with at home and in our personal lives, and then we're coming into work facing all these complexities, and especially if you're working in a nonprofit sector, if you're working in a social environment, the load is real, right? But we haven't been teaching secondary trauma to social workers. Like, no wonder people leave, no wonder there's high turnover rates, right? So we haven't been supporting our people properly so that they can deal with the change that's happening in their change of worldview as they're going through it. That's why humanity's coming back as a central theme, and I'm glad for it. Yeah.
What are your other questions, folks?
I want to hear.
Oh.
So I do some hello, Calhoun, settler descended, living on Trondequichin territory in what is currently known as Dawson City, Yukon. And I work for Queer Yukon, and sometimes I end up doing similar work to what you're presenting today with like very small town, but educating organizations and people working in organizations on 2S plus issues and 2S plus identity. And I guess it really resonated with me the way you said that we're all at different parts of our learning, and we need to account for that. Part of accounting for that is recognizing that the self needs to be first in the circle, and that we can't educate while we're going through our own dissonances or worries or problems, or carrying somebody through, helping someone through a grieving learning process can be very difficult emotionally, and can open up wounds. And I was wondering if you could speak to any strategies that you have to protect your peace and to protect your strength as you, I get the impression that part of the way that you educate is by offering your strength, and that like your presence here is you are offering strength, and I'm picking up on that. How do you maintain that when you're educating maybe a room full of people where some of those people are touching on some of those old wounds, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oof, that's a loaded question, man. I guess, so a good friend of mine was the New Brunswick, was it Racism Commissioner for Human Rights, okay? And so she works in EDI a lot, and I once asked her the question of, you know, how do you deal with people that come to present to you and think they know it all, right? But then they have a lot of learning to do. And you know that as a person, but you don't want to be that person that kind of destroys them. You know, really, that's what it comes down to. So Manju told me, her name is it's Dr. Manju Varma, if ever, and she has a company called Engaging Matters. She's a great thought leader as well. She suggested that as you are talking to people that aren't quite there yet, okay, you have to have a lot of grace. And she used the word grace. Yeah, which at first I was like, because I'm a woman, and I was like, grace usually to me means frilly grace, you know what I mean? But so I had to change my perspective on that. And now the word grace means meeting people where they're at and understanding that they have to do the work that I've been privileged to be, you know, accustomed to. We live in a bubble, right? And so when I go visit my family in Balmoral up north in New Brunswick, they are racist and misogynist and all the things, right? And I find it very difficult for me. I go up there and I'm exhausted by the time I get home because I'm wearing a mask. They don't even know I'm bi, okay? I'm in a heteronormative relationship, so it's easy for me to float. But I still try and plant seeds. So that's my way of helping them, of accompanying them, stewarding them through that change. So instead of judging, and yes, I have the feelings, I do, trust me, but instead of judging, I really try to step out of myself to offer what I can to help evolve. Because if we're all very upfront with it and aggressive with it and defensive all the time, and we need to be sometimes, okay? I'm not saying we can't be. I'm saying sometimes we need to take a leadership role of stewardship instead of authoritarian dictatorship.
You never have any issue. I love it.
Yeah.
Very much there as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I love it very much there as well. When I've been in those spaces, you don't ever find, how do I put it? Sometimes I almost feel condescending when I'm like, oh, honey, I need to bring you grace because you're not quite there yet.
Yeah, we don't say that.
No. It may be, but maybe my internal monologue's like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, just so my whole posture is really approaching it with curiosity.
Yeah,
you know,
I love that.
What environment can created this? You know,
I learn about it.
Learn.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.